An infant passed away while resting against his devoted canine companion. What unfolded in the following days left everyone who witnessed it completely heartbroken. They assumed it was simply another tranquil after peaceful moment with a child nestled against soft, warm fur. But when the quietness grew too profound, their world collapsed in seconds. What this faithful dog did, after Lucine, his smallest companion, left, even experienced emergency responders, speechless. This is about a devotion so profound it refused to comprehend the concept of farewell, the sacred routine. The home held that particular kind of stillness that exists only when genuine love occupies a space. A solitary lamp bathed the family room sofa in warm amber light, illuminating where the infant slumbered. His tiny form was pressed against Max's thick fur. The massive dog's broad chest expanded and contracted like a protective barrier beneath the child's delicate body, their breathing patterns synchronized perfectly. "Just watch them together," Alina murmured from the entrance, her voice mixing weariness with affection. "He absolutely refuses to drift off unless Max is positioned right beside him." David ran his fingers through his hair, still dressed in his wrinkled office clothes. "He's an animal, Alina. You're acting as though he's a certified caregiver." "He essentially is a caregiver," she responded gently, a soft smile touching her exhausted face. "And honestly, he's more attentive than most humans would be." This had evolved into their evening tradition, a cherished pattern neither could fathom disrupting. The instant Alina positioned the infant in his bassinet, Max would approach with clear intention, arrange his substantial body alongside the miniature one, and settle his head near enough that their exhaled breaths blended in the subdued lighting. If the infant merely shifted position, Max's paw would edge closer. If he whimpered, the dog would produce soft sounds and press his muzzle gently until tranquility was restored. The people next door had cautioned them. Naturally, canines can develop jealousy when an infant enters the household, they'd mentioned with confident expressions. But Max had never displayed even the slightest hint of bitterness. He followed Alina from space to space, anticipating the infant's delicate coos, anticipating the silent approval to position himself beside his small human. One evening, drenched with rainfall, Alina discovered them on the sofa once more. The infant was stretched across Max's muscular shoulder, his impossibly tiny hand gripping the dog's soft ear as though it were his only anchor to the world. She retrieved her phone, unable to resist capturing it. "I'm convinced you two will melt everyone's hearts someday," she whispered, preserving the scene. Max's ear twitched slightly, but apart from that, he remained absolutely motionless. When David entered, his expression carried the burden of an exhausting day. "You're awake still." "I'm unable to sleep," Alina confessed, her gaze never departing from the pair. "His breathing pattern seems unusual tonight, slightly irregular." David dismissed it with the nonchalance of someone too drained to be concerned. "It's just the storm. Allow them to rest. You require rest as well." The morning, everything changed. The hours passed slowly. Rain hammered against the glass like a relentless timepiece, counting down moments. They were unaware they were surrendering. Alina dozed in the recliner, her eyes partially open, continuing to observe them both. When daybreak finally emerged, she awakened to something more disturbing than noise. She awakened to its complete absence. No gentle cooing sounds, no small grunts or sighs, just a stillness that registered as fundamentally wrong in her core. The infant's miniature fist rested open against Max's coat, fingers loose. For one optimistic instant, she believed they were both simply immersed in deep slumber. Then, she observed Max's head shifting slightly, but the infant's chest showed no movement whatsoever. "David." Her voice fractured like shattering crystal. "David, come here immediately." He rushed in, half awake, vision unfocused. "What's happening?" "Is not breathing." She touched the infant's shoulder softly, then, with increased urgency, "Wake up. Precious, please, please wake up." Max whimpered, bewildered, prodding her hand, as though inquiring what was occurring. David's complexion drained completely of color. "Dial 911 immediately." Alina's hands trembled so intensely she could scarcely hold the phone. "He feels cold," she cried into the device. "Dear God, he's freezing." The operator's calm voice disappeared. Behind the wail of approaching emergency vehicles, David placed quivering fingers against the infant's minuscule chest, his voice fragmenting. "Come on, little one. Just breathe for us. Please breathe." Max barked one sharp, frantic, then pressed his heated head against the infant's torso, frantically attempting to transfer his warmth. When the paramedics burst through the entrance, the family room transformed into organized pandemonium. One of them extended toward the infant. Max's growl began deep, his complete body quivering. "Restrain that dog," one paramedic commanded. David grabbed Max's collar, but the dog's muscles were steel. "He won't harm anyone," David begged frantically. "I give you my word." They elevated the infant away. Max surged forward with a howl so primitive, so utterly devastated, that it paralyzed everyone momentarily. Felina collapsed to the floor, her cry piercing through the sirens like a dagger. "Please, please allow me to accompany him." Her voice disintegrated into something barely recognizable. She crawled ahead, extending desperately for the gurney as they maneuvered it toward the exit. "That's my child. Please don't transport him alone." One paramedic attempted to intercept her. "Ma'am, you cannot." "I must." She sobbed so intensely, the words barely materialized. "He despises being isolated. He becomes terrified. He requires his stuffed bear. He requires me." The younger medic paused, remorse crossing his youthful face. "Ma'am," he murmured, voice heavy with empathy, "we'll attempt everything within our power. You have my word." The entrance sealed shut, creating a vacuum in the atmosphere where sound previously existed. The reverberation of Elena's screams ricocheted off the surfaces and vanished. She collapsed near the entryway, palms pressed against the frigid floor. Her respiration arrived in irregular gasps, each inhalation more acute and agonizing than the previous. "David," she whispered into the void. "Why did I permit him to sleep there? I should have monitored him more closely." Max circled the corridor, scratching urgently at the entrance, his complete body trembling. He pressed his nose to the precise location where the infant sat still, remained, and released a haunting whimper that saturated the space with something far more terrible than silence. The unbearable truth. When David returned an hour afterward, the sound of his footfalls communicated everything. Elena elevated her head gradually, vision swollen and crimson. Hope ignited once in her expression, then extinguished the instant she witnessed his face. He remained silent. He was incapable. His shoulders drooped under invisible mass. Hospital identification still wrapped around his wrist. Elena's lips quivered. "No." David took one stride, then another, until he collapsed alongside her on the floor. "They attempted everything," he whispered, voice vacant. "They attempted everything." The scream that erupted from her chest penetrated straight through lympha, type that persists even when breath expires. She pounded her fists against his chest, sobbing uncontrollably. He was perfectly healthy. He was absolutely fine yesterday evening. Why didn't I awaken? Why didn't I monitor him? David simply embraced her, his own tears descending into her hair, repeating her name continuously, as though uttering it might somehow retrieve her from the precipice. Max pressed himself against them both, positioning his head on Elena's knee, whining softly. She rotated toward him and immersed her face in his dense fur, body convulsing violently. The residence that once resonated with joy now felt like a mausoleum. The vigil begins. Evening arrived once more. Identical sofa, identical lamp, but more subdued now, as though even the illumination was mourning. Max's respiration occupied the space, consistent but labored. His muzzle rested precisely where the infant's head once positioned. Every several minutes, he released a small whine-soft, inquiring, "We're heartbreaking." David observed him from across the shadowed space. "They claim animals forget rapidly," he muttered with bitterness. "I suppose they were completely mistaken." Felina brushed a tear from her cheek. "He's anticipating him to awaken." Max elevated his head, ears rotating toward the corridor, as though perceiving something only he could detect. Then he reclined once more, protecting the silence. They believed the most difficult part had concluded, but Max hadn't even begun to comprehend what loss authentically signified. Days of searching. For days following the memorial service, The residence scarcely seemed to respond. Window coverings remained closed. The infant's space remained unaltered. Bassinet, immaculate. Blanket, arranged precisely in the corner. Every occasion, David attempted to relocate something. Alina prevented him. "Not yet," she whispered. "His scent still lingers in there." Max barely consumed food. He would remain positioned near the nursery entrance from morning until evening. Tail, immobile, vision fixed on the small white bassinet. Sometimes he whimpered. Other occasions, he simply reclined there, ears responding to sounds that existed exclusively in his recollection. At nighttime, Alina maintained the infant monitor activated, even though the bassinet remained vacant. She insisted it assisted her sleep. But every occasion Max shifted, the monitor activated, and she'd awaken, anticipating to perceive a cry. Only silence responded. One morning, David discovered Max positioned inside the bassinet itself, his head resting precisely where the infant's chest once expanded and contracted. The sight twisted his stomach with grief. "Alina," he murmured, voice fragmenting. "Look at him. He's deteriorating." Elena's response arrived, as barely audible. "Aren't we all?" The breaking point. The veterinarian's words were compassionate but resolute. "Canines experience grief as well, but he requires space to recover." David agreed reluctantly. "For several days," he stated. Though his voice wavered, "the boarding facility will provide excellent care. We both require time to process." Alina hesitated, fear in her vision. "If you'll believe, we're abandoning him too." David glanced away, unable to encounter her gaze. "Perhaps it's the only method any of us will discover peace." That afternoon, they transported Max to the small pet facility on the town's periphery. The woman at the reception area smiled sympathetically when she witnessed Alina weeping. "Don't be concerned, ma'am. We'll maintain him comfortable and secure. You can bring something recognizable if you desire." Alina carefully positioned the infant's yellow blanket in Max's bed. The dog inhaled it profoundly, then gazed up at her with those impossibly profound, questioning eyes. She knelt down and embraced his face in her hands. "We'll return, understood? Just for several nights. Please, behave well." Max licked her wrist once, slow, uncertain, almost requesting her to reconsider. When they rotated to depart, he barked once, sharp and bewildered, and attempted to follow. The staff gently restrained him. Alina didn't glance back. If she had, she wouldn't have possessed the strength to walk away. What they discovered that evening, a facility worker perceived disturbing sounds emanating from Max's space. Frantic scratching, desperate whining. He went to investigate, anticipating the dog simply required to go outside. What he discovered made him freeze in position. Max had dragged his blanket to the corner and was excavating frantically into the surface. His paws were raw and hemorrhaging, claws damaged. The plaster shredded and dispersed across the floor underneath the torn drywall. The worker identified a small cavity, and inside, positioned against the cold cement, the edge of the infant's yellow blanket. Every single evening afterward, Max repeated the ceremony. He consumed only sufficient to survive, then anticipated until the illumination extinguished before resuming his search, scratching, excavating, frantically seeking what he'd lost. When the staff contacted Alina and David a week afterward to explain, Alina erupted into tears immediately. "He was searching for him," she whispered through her sobs. "He believed his infant was concealed somewhere inside the surfaces." Coming home, they transported home in crushing silence. The rear seat was vacant. The leash remained folded and unused. David clenched the steering mechanism until his knuckles transformed white. "We should never have abandoned him there," he stated quietly, voice dense with regret. Alina nodded, staring vacantly through the window. "He's the only one who continues to believe he's returning." When they opened the vehicle entrance, Max jumped out before they could even unfasten the leash. He sprinted straight into the residence, down the corridor, directly to the nursery. He pressed his head against the bassinet and released a sound neither of them had ever perceived before, deep, aching moan that ascended into a cry so human it shattered them both. Alina covered her mouth, tears streaming. "He remembers everything." David's voice fractured completely. He never forgot. Not for a single instant. Max circled the bassinet 3 times, then reclined, with the yellow blanket positioned under his chin. His eyes fluttered, but sleep wouldn't arrive. He simply remained there, inhaling the vacant air where his infant used to exist. The monitor speaks. That evening, the infant monitor activated once more. Felina was half asleep when she perceived it, a faint rustle, a low, consistent hum. Max's breathing, slow and rhythmic, directly beside the bassinet. It sounded almost identical to before, when it was the infant positioned there, instead of just a memory. She walked to the nursery entrance, her heart heavy. Moonlight spilled through the window coverings, bathing everything in soft silver illumination. Max gazed up at her once, his tail producing a single weak thump against the floor. Then he lowered his head back onto the blanket. David approached behind her, wrapping his arms around her shoulders. He's protecting him once more. Alina nodded, tears sliding silently down her face. He doesn't comprehend. He's departed. Perhaps that's a blessing, David whispered. Perhaps believing he's still present is the only method Max can survive this. They remained there for an extended time, the 3 of them, suspended in that sacred quiet, finding peace. The following morning, Alina opened the nursery window for the first occasion in weeks. Sunlight crept across the floor, touching the bassinet, Max's fur, and her trembling hands. She knelt beside him and stroked his head gently. You don't have to continue searching anymore, Max, she stated softly, voice fragmenting. He's right here with us. He always was. Max exhaled profoundly, his eyes closing gradually for the first occasion in days. His chest expanded and contracted with a calmness that had been absent since that terrible morning. The atmosphere felt lighter somehow, the silence gentler, as though something invisible had finally discovered peace. Alina rotated to David, fresh tears glistening. We'll maintain his blanket here for both of them. David nodded, his voice barely maintaining together. He earned it. That evening, Max slumbered beside the bassinet once more. No scratching, no excavating, no desperate searching, just breathing, consistent and peaceful and certain. Outside, dawn painted the horizon in shades of gold and crimson. Inside, the loyal dog dreamed quietly beside the empty basket, the yellow blanket between his paws, forever protecting what was departed, but never truly lost. If this story moved your heart, share your thoughts in the comments below. Do you believe dogs experience loss the way we do? Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more profound, true stories that remind us what unconditional love truly means. Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses. Please leave a like on this video and share your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe to The Gentle Bond for more incredible true stories of love, loyalty, and the magic that happens when a pet becomes family.